I wish I could have not cared my whole career. But I'm crippled when it comes to the court of public opinion. As much as I love the things I make, I will sell out on them in a heartbeat if the public doesn't like it. If I made this microphone, I'd be like, look at this. It's beautiful. It's artistic. I put everything I have into this. This is the statement I was trying to make. And if both of you were like, I think it sucks, I'd be like, you're right. Let's kill it right now.
Welcome back to DC Studios Showcase. I'm nerd commentator Frankie Smith.
I'm pop culture pundit Coy Jandro.
And DC Studios Showcase is a safe place for nerds. Today we're sitting down with the biggest nerd of all time, Kevin Smith.
Movies, podcasting, comic books, including Bizarro Year None. The man has done everything and he's mastered all of it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I love that he writes, he directs, and produces, and he's an actor.
He's the reason I'm here. I would not be in this chair without Kevin Smith. He showed me this was possible, and I'm so excited.
I love it. I think this episode is going to be a lot of fun, especially since there's so much that he's done in like every facet. What do you feel like is Kevin Smith's masterpiece?
The reason I say I'm here because of Kevin Smith is Mallrats. Like, Mallrats to me taught me the language of my people. Like, without Mallrats...
What people
like,
are
nerds.
those?
Like, in 95, there weren't people talking like that. Like, there wasn't art representing, like, deep comic book nerds. That movie's got Stan Lee in it before, like, every cameo.
He was you think that gave Stan Lee the bug? Like, he was like, I'm going to be in every movie.
Oh, that guy always wanted to be in it. Like, that guy had that bravado, but I think Kevin Smith and his reverence for him and, like, the way he reveres comic books and, like, a character like Brody Bruce showing kids like me that there were other people like that, like, it opened my world up. And I was a mall kid, and, like, it's so 90s. Mallrats, I think, is the most indicative of a time and a people of any of his work. It's incredible.
I'm surprised you didn't say Clerks. I thought you for sure
I
were
love
gonna go
Clerks.
Yeah.
But Clerks is like a what if. That's another word. I was a Mallrat.
You were a
fan,
Mallrat,
so it spoke to me.
I grew up in the city, so, you know, malls weren't my thing. We do strips and, like, small businesses, so I didn't get it. And I was in a closet nerd, so I couldn't even...
yeah, see, he let me be out and proud.
Ah, I see.
What's yours?
Dogma.
Okay.
Hands down. It was the most provocative thing I'd ever seen. They had Alanis Morissette play God. Chris Rock was like the 13th apostle that got written out of history. Ben Affleck at his hottest. I mean, until he got jacked and became Batman, I mean, I was like, why is everyone talking about Brad Pitt?
Very hot Matt Damon, too. Here. Real hot Matt Damon.
And he played Loki, right?
Yeah,
he played Loki, which I thought was very...
different one.
Yeah, different Loki. But I just thought the story was so original. I went to Catholic school my entire life, and I, for some reason around that time, decided to read the Bible cover to cover. It's pretty cool. If you guys ever read it out.
I've heard of this book.
It's pretty cool. But I had so many questions, and one thing about being Catholic is it's really hard to ask like priests and stuff questions. They're like, just like enjoy the work.
There's this movie that'll give me the answers.
But I felt like it's all about finding God. I really loved seeing a woman centered. I think Alien was the last time I saw like a real protagonist as a woman, and she's a hero and she's being physical.
Did you go back to church and ask them about shit monsters? Was that like
I did not. Okay. I did not.
Okay.
You know, they did not play that there.
I was like, I don't know if the
Monsignor, please, I have a question about
Is skee-ball biblical?
To your point, I like Mallrats a lot too, because I like seeing people live themselves freely and truly, and nerds now get to be on the internet and weird swag and stuff like that, but you know, that wasn't like that back then. We were in the closet.
Brody Bruce was like my hero growing up, but it took me until I grew up to realize he was kind of a dick. And that was also something really interesting, is when you watch those movies as a kid and you idolize someone, and then you grow up and you're like, there are bad nerds and good nerds.
Yes.
And like, it's really cool to see that get actualized.
How are you fostering your community to make sure that you're bringing in good nerds and not bad nerds?
I generally only review movies I like.
Okay.
And so when I'm advocating for a film, I'm not getting clicks off hating. Like I don't make, because it's a lot easier to hate. It's a lot easier.
I'm the internet's #1 hater. Are you kidding me? I love hating.
It causes like a certain rallying, right?
Yeah.
Whereas,
well, no, I run a strict program.
Okay.
I'm a hater, but when I'm a hater, it's like typically against like it's with purpose. I don't just be hating to hate.
Mm.
So if I'm hating on something, it's like, I think this could have been done better.
Yeah.
And it'll make us all better if it was done this way, you know?
So that's constructive hating.
Yeah, I'm a constructive hater, but a hater
that.
nonetheless.
Like Kendrick,
yeah.
because Drake ain't shit. But I'm gonna say, like, talking positively about art is so much more for me because it's so hard to make art, so hard to get art out there, it's so hard. So I'm always reviewing stuff that way.
Yeah.
Kevin Smith taught me that.
You know, he loves art, and he loves a lot of animation.
But like the positivity, like he likes to advocate positively. He doesn't like crap on movies. He likes to showcase the things that he loves, and I think that's really important.
He seems like the type of person who just does work for the love of the game.
Yeah.
You know, and you feel it when you watch his shows, when you watch his movie, when you read his books.
And podcasting, like he was doing it before people podcasted. So not only would I not be in this seat without Mallrats, I don't know if podcasting would be to scale. And like Evening with Kevin Smith was him selling DVDs of him talking nerd stuff, touring.
Yeah.
That's what inspired me to start talking about it.
Yeah.
Like we're talking like a singular vision here.
Kevin Smith definitely feels like a man of the people. I mean, we're
100%.
talking about him like he's Princess Diana.
Let's dive a little deeper into Bizarro Year None because I'm so excited for more people to discover this book. The first issue already sold out, and I think it's only going to get better and better. This is written by Kevin Smith and Eric Carrasco.
What? From Supergirl, the CW show?
I assume that's how they met, and that makes sense. Like this world, that
And Kevin
environment.
Smith loves the CW verse.
He does.
A man
He
after
does.
my heart.
And it's illustrated by Nick Pitaro, who did Manhattan Project. So this is a murderer's row of talent,
Yeah.
and they're writing a character that is so bizarre.
It reminds me a bit of All-Star Superman. Maybe it's the art.
It does have a Frank Quitely sensibility to it.
Yeah. But not just that, but in the first issue, there's a heavy focus on Jimmy Olsen.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminds me a lot of like laying the groundwork and being philosophical. And to see that with a Bizarro story is very interesting.
It's also a lot more uplifting than I expected. Like
Yeah.
so far.
So
Like
far,
it's got
yeah.
this like almost Pleasantville energy other than Bizarro. It's really interesting.
So what do you know about Bizarro?
You know, he's a character that's like very popular and public, but his journey is so interesting because I think it depends on who's writing him.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like me and Bizarro is what I know about Bizarro. You know, he's got like this interesting way of speaking. He speaks in reverse. He has all of Superman's powers, but they're kind of in a broken way, and he's not well.
I always found Bizarro to be tragic. I know him mostly from Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. Those are like just the standout things of Bizarro. And it's funny, our producer, Toby, when we were prepping for this episode, mentioned like, oh, he's like Ultraman. And I was like, why would you say that? Like, just because they look at
now that he said it, though.
But once he said it, I rewatched Superman, and I was like, oh.
If you zoom out.
Not even if you
to be
zoom
like a
out,
regular person, not like us.
even the way that James Gunn directed the scenes where he's unmasked, he makes like he's very pale, his hair is messy. He throws him in another universe.
I think going in that black hole, he might come back me and Bizarro.
And he's dumb. Like Ultraman is not. He can speak and stuff like that. But they really talk about like how that version of Ultraman in the James Gunn universe doesn't have the capacity to speak, doesn't have the capacity to think, and he's kind of tragic in the way that I normally see Bizarro, where you know he doesn't have autonomy. He's just listening to what's around him.
He's definitely a cautionary character, which I like. He's definitely a character you're meant to feel bad for, even as he's
and he's
villain.
a copy. He's a copy of, which I think is very interesting. You know,
I'm also really curious because Kevin Smith's known for his writing, right?
Yeah.
Like he's known for being a linguist, and so I'm really curious, like his sensibilities toward writing a character that doesn't speak well.
Right, and how is he going to pivot that to make him feel complex?
Or is he enjoying the fact that he's having to think through, not thinking through?
He made a character that speaks in comic book sounds. I'm sure
Yeah,
he can figure it out.
Onomatopoeia is incredible.
he
No,
can
that's
figure
this
it
challenge,
out.
I think. I think it'd be fun as a writer to challenge yourself. And issue 1 already sold out. Like, we're on our second printing, but you can find it. But I love that the character is so enigmatic that people want to discover. Like, they want to find out what he's about.
Absolutely. I think it's also because DC is cooking right now.
That's
So
true.
whatever they put
That's
out
true.
and said that if they're like, it's good, we're like, we're going to read
selling
it.
out.
Yeah, I'm insufferable in my spaces. I'm like, oh, DC, yeah, you know, we're the baddest in the games. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of fun, but I can't wait to bring him in and nerd out. This is one of those guests that like has so many interests and so many things to talk about that I know we'll probably be talking about for a while. So
6-hour podcast coming soon.
I hope you guys are ready, you know? So, all right, well, let's go to our interview with Kevin Smith.
Let's bring him out.
Well, welcome to the show, Kevin.
Oh my God, delighted to be here, man. I'm a man who loves the sound of his own voice, but to hear the sound of his own voice speaking about DC Comics.
You were the first one. We were like, we need Kevin Smith.
Yeah.
How long? Well, how long have you been doing it?
This is second season. This is episode 4.
So if I was the first one, why did it take so long?
You're
The man
busy.
can
You're
text
busy.
me.
You're a busy guy.
we talked last season, but you're touring movies, you're running around. We've talked about this show more on your shows.
That's true.
So here we are, the crossover's happening.
Now you're here.
I'm delighted to slip in before you become a married man.
Yeah, we're 4 weeks from today.
Is that 4 weeks from today? I'm going to perform the man's wedding. So in exchange, I said, "Can I be on the podcast?" He goes, "If you have."
I
That's how you
suppose.
did it?
I said I got some DC work to pick out. And he goes,
When the schedule allows, we'll figure this out.
Yes.
Talking about what do you feel like your masterpiece is?
Of all my flicks?
Yeah. Or anything, of all the work you've done.
Like what? Well, a masterpiece, if you break it down, the definition of that goes back to when you had an apprentice working with an artisan or a master, somebody who was excellent at what they did, trained for years, and eventually that junior would present a thing that they worked on based on everything they learned from their teacher. Hence, the piece was the masterpiece. So I'm tempted to be like, well, Clerks right out the gate, because people love that and stuff. But that's just lucky. Unlikely choice, but I'd give you two, and they have nothing to do with like the View Askew Universe movies, no Jay or Silent Bob. Either Red State or Tusk, I feel, are like two movies that really only I could have made after a lifetime of making movies. Like, I couldn't have done those right out the gate, and I don't think any other artist would have bothered to make a movie about a guy who turns another guy into a walrus. So if the point of art is self-expression, and that self-expression is individual, those are two of the most individualistic movies I think I've ever made. Really stand on their own. And also they look better than the rest of them because I've been working for a while and stuff, and two great DPs, Dave Klein, who shot like all our early stuff, and now he just shot Mandalorian and Grogu. He shot Red State, and then James Laxton, who shot Moonlight, shot Tusk. So I got lucky having two great DPs who were willing to take risks. But those movies would be considered the lesser of anything I've ever done. Most people are like, oh, I like his early stuff.
What do you think Coy picked?
Mallrats.
Oh, right, he did pick Mallrats.
It's like a yearly tradition to be like, hey man, some Mallrats too? You said like a decade ago I could come play.
Only one that cares about Mallrats
He's
too.
very passionate about Mallrats. He in the green room.
It gave me language. It's when you speak to the 10 people, I didn't feel like anyone else spoke like me until Mallrats. Right. So I still call Mike Flanagan Walt Flanagan accidentally because Walt Flanagan's dog changed my life. But like right. Brody Bruce is the person that gave me a voice. Yeah. Like I was a kid reading these comics and not having anyone to talk to, and then I'm 7 years old and I see a movie that's like there are others, and it was not just a movie. It was sometimes like an awakening.
Sometimes you do like get to see yourself in a flick, and it does change the game where you're just like, oh, I exist. Because I'm reflected in the big white mirror, right? Like in the movie theater. Mostly everything I've ever learned about myself was not in a classroom, not in a church, definitely in the darkness of a movie theater, man, the true cathedral. So sometimes before you can feel valid in the world, you need to know that somebody recognizes you. And I think with that movie, you know, the main character was a massive comic book fan. Nobody had done that before. Now, throw a rock.
We're cool now.
Yes, now it's become the norm and stuff. But back then, it was still widely done, but we didn't have a way to get in touch with each other and tell each other these things. Internet changed all that. And Mallrats happened like a minute before the internet. Yeah. So if Mallrats had happened in the age of the internet, it would have no effect on you because you'd already be seen. But because it happened when it did, you got to, I honestly believe if my career had happened 3 minutes later, it wouldn't have lasted as long as it has, because when I make Clerks, Mallrats, and even to some degree Chasing Amy, the internet doesn't exist, so I'm kind of one of a kind. Once the internet happens, there's going to be millions of Kevin Smiths who are just like, I'm going to pick up a camera and tell my story. What am I waiting for? So I got in right before it broke wide and went into everybody's hands. It was truly democratized.
But the difficulty of that is being the futurist that is able to capture the zeitgeist.
But is it a futurist to be like, I worked at a convenience store, so I just made a movie about working at a convenience store? If anything, that's a pastist, because it was predicated on what I did.
Making it for everyone. Things is very different. For me, it's dogma, and I think you have foresight in the work that you do, and I think you don't care in a way that makes you prolific. You know what I mean?
You're sweet. Here's the I don't care part, because I honestly, I wish I could have not cared my whole career. But I'm crippled when it comes to the court of public opinion. As much as I love the things I make, I will sell out on them in a heartbeat if the public doesn't like it. If I made this microphone, I'd be like, look at this. It's beautiful. It's artistic. I put everything I have into this. This is the statement I was trying to make. And if both of you were like, I think it sucks, I'd be like, you're right. Let's kill it. I would sell out of my art so fast.
Things that are so bold. You're Masters of the Universe.
The cartoon?
Yes, I love that one. I was like, whoa, it's not centered around He-Man. That was provocative.
And that was the problem, I guess. A lot of people felt it should have been centered around He-Man.
You made Alanis Morissette God.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
I know, man. I always get like dog walked on the internet, or they think they're dog walking you when they're like, oh, he's been woke. He went woke. But I'm like, kids, not for nothing, but if that is the standard, I have been woke since like the first movie. Like
these are things about the workers on the Death Star being unionized and needing rights.
And then also like, you know, Alanis is God, like Chris Rock is the 13th apostle. Like even going back to Chasing Amy, like that's just always been me. I grew up in a world surrounded by strong figures, most of them predominantly strong female types. Like my father was around, but he worked at nights. He worked at the post office and stuff, canceling stamps. So my mom was the person that I was around all the time, and my mother was like fucking the original woman, man. Like she just set the tone. Every time I write a female character, my mom is in the DNA because she was such a strong personality. So, you know, when people were kind of go after me now, like, oh, fucking, like with Masters of the Universe. Oh, it's She-Man. Oh, the whole thing's about fucking Teela, not even He-Man and stuff. Forgetting that the show, every episode of the show was He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. Yeah. The whole group together and stuff like that. But they went after me for stuff like that, but it's just like...
And it was good, but you know, those
I hate to be this guy, and I'm not like trying to get on a soapbox, and I ain't trying to win any favor, but like sometimes you just gotta explain yourself. 51% of the fucking population is female. Why would I ignore that when I'm trying to write something that appeals to the world? Like, it's madness to me, man. Like stick in your lane. I'm like, well, my lane is humanist. So it's neither male nor female. I'm here like everyone else. I'm just a person amongst people. And so I tend to write about people. Now, imagine it would be so fucking boring writing about all male characters and shit. And that's from Mr. J and Silent Bob.
I think it's, there's a portion of the population that believes that women don't exist in this community. So I think that's where you're getting the pushback. They're like, why are you catering? Yes, 51% are women, but like, we're not here.
The 80s and 90s was also very exhausting because of the Brody Bruce type.
Yeah.
I remember one of the first things you said to me was, we were talking about Brody and my love of Mallrats, and you were like, hey, but you're so much nicer than Brody. Like, because I had worshipped him for 20 years. And
Brody was like, honestly, like if you look at him in the movie and you're like, oh, he rocks, he knows everything about comics and shit, he's opinionated. You know, I ain't selling out on him. I love Brody Bruce and I love my movies, but one generation removed is the incel kid who sits online and everybody's wrong and
he wrote the Michael Keaton letter. You know what I mean? He was writing letters about like Keaton getting cast.
The incels look different back then. I'm one of those people who grew up like strapped to my dad's chest comic books. And I would see the incels, but they were writing letters. So they're not on Twitter. Sometimes they would just flat out walk up to the comic book writer and be like, I hated this. Why did you do this? Why did you make this decision? I mean, they voted to kill Jason Todd. Like, they were ruthless.
They paid to vote. They called.
They called. That was you.
That was huge.
I mean, I guess
I didn't care what it cost, man. It was like, what? Are you serious?
I have power in comic books?
Well,
it was crazy, man. I remember that era, and I remember that ad, and I remember like calling the number and putting in the vote. Like that will never happen again because now you would just do an online poll.
Right.
And now they wouldn't even ask anybody. They would just do it because it's like, it's going to gin up outrage. Oh my God, let's do it.
I got to see the pages from Jim Starlin's,
the alts?
Of the alts?
Of Robin Living, where he's like, he's alive.
Yeah, and there's this glee.
I've seen the picture online. Yeah. It's a smiling Jim Aparo Batman.
It's incredible.
Wow.
Just the one smile you see, but you can still feel Jim's like angst in the pages.
Jim was a really wonderful Batman artist, but I was so judgy when I was a kid, and I would always be like, that's like the coloring book version of Batman. You know, because I wanted
so
like...
clean.
Yeah, it's so clean. I wanted like dirty Frank Miller or something like that. But like looking back, it's just beautiful. His stuff is so elegant, so clean, and very classic Batman. You know, like very close to Neil Adams Batman.
Who I think like
with his cape, it was particularly in the performance of his cape.
that leanness is what I'm curious if they go to. We don't know anything yet for DCU Batman. I will say we do not know. But that's one of the things I'm really curious about as a big Batman fan. Like, what do you want the DCU Batman to distinguish from the Reeves Batman?
I prefer when the character is allowed to exist in a world of grotesques and over the top. I'm not saying Dutch tilt the camera, and give me 60s Batman. No, but like, Tim Burton's Batman, when it came out, we were all like, "Oh, it is the best because it's so dark and real," and
it's campy. But
it also is a degree campy. You like it when you like it.
No,
real?
I like them both, but I
same too. I'll take, and for the record, all Batman.
I like all Batman.
Is a good Batman.
I know.
Yeah.
I think Batman
even when
and
it's
Robin's
even
my
when
favorite.
it's good. Even
Batman
when
and Robin's
Batman
my
and
favorite.
It's the first
because
person I've ever
it came out. I was prime age for
so
Batman and Robin.
age appropriate. So
But,
nostalgic and sentimentally speaking,
yes.
that's the one. But
yes.
are you able to, and I ain't trying to dissuade you, man, everyone's Batman is their Batman, but are you also able to divorce yourself from like, well, this is the one that I love because of my childhood, and just be like, well, this one is better just because it's like all around.
Honestly, Matt Reeves' Batman is
That's
my
the one
favorite.
that does it for you?
And I think people don't give it enough credit for how campy it is. Like, what are you showing me? And the like ridiculous voices they have. The movie starts off and Batman says, "I'm overwhelmed, I'm stressed." And like, I thought that was very cool. There's moments where like he's testing out equipment and he's nervous, he's scared. Him putting on that
the eye makeup,
and actually seeing it for the first time.
Really campy. A lot of like there are moments that I'm like, this is campy Batman.
To me, the power of what the DCU can do is Crypto, because Crypto should not land in Matt Reeves' Gotham. And I think the power of anchoring things to him allows Batman to be somewhat elevated, have blue or gray maybe, and do the things that are Neil Adams, which is why when you said Neil Adams, I thought that might be the direction they go with the DCU, because when people want that crossover, I don't see Crypto being something that can go like, oop, and now the Penguin makes sense. Like, that would not fit to me.
I'm incredibly saddened that it took me at least 12 seconds to go, oh, the dog. Because we live in a world where it means something else. Like, my whole life, Crypto meant one thing, and now it means something else.
Well, what did it mean?
Crypto, the dog.
The dog,
Oh,
Superman's
you said
dog.
it meant something else.
But now it means crypto. Like when somebody says, well, what they need in the DC
like
universe, some
cryptocurrency.
Bitcoin, crypto. I'm like, no.
What if Bruce
No!
with Bitcoin?
Yes.
I thought it meant something. I was like, what are they talking about, drugs?
No,
No, the
meme
crypto,
coins.
man. Like the dog had always been the only
I
crypto
think
we knew.
that's gonna
But
be
you're
our
right.
nice tonality.
It'd just be very convenient to have one Batman in the universe. I'm all for having a second Batman, particularly if he's portrayed in a completely different way.
Yeah. What was your favorite, like, first comic book that, like, got you activated?
The one that brought me into the fold, I saw, there were two. Well, it was technically three. My dad took me to get my hair cut at Vinny the Barber when I was about 5 years old. And if you've never been to a barber shop when you were a kid, it can be an intimidating experience because there's a giant chair that looks like an electric chair and shit like that, and it smells like old people and Barbasol and whatnot. So they put like a wooden board on the arms of the chair, to lift me up, because otherwise he couldn't even reach my hair because I was so small. I was behind the back of the chair. And I guess that kind of scared me because I was up high and stuff. And so I guess I got emotional. Maybe I cried a little bit. And my dad took me off the chair, and Vinny the Barber goes, let him read the comic books, he'll feel better. They're under the TV. So I had like a TV on a TV stand with rabbit ears, and underneath 2 stacks of comic books. And these are the first comic books I'd ever encountered in my life. Now, I'd seen the Super Friends on TV. I'd seen Marvel cartoons like Spider-Man, and whatnot. So I'm familiar with the concept of superheroes. But I'd never actually seen a comic book or held a comic book at this point. So the first comic book I see is the Neil Adams Batman cover with Batman on the giant card.
Huge, impactful image for your first comic.
That's what drew me. Now, I knew both of these characters from the TV show, from Batman, not just the cartoons, but Batman, it was in reruns, 66 Batman, that Batman. But I'd never seen them portrayed like this.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it was frightening compared to the image of Batman I was accustomed to. Thrilling. It just seemed, for lack of a better description, naughty. where it's like they're getting away with something. And then as you leaf through the book, like seeing, you know, I'd seen comic strips in the newspaper and the Sunday morning funnies and stuff. But watching sequential storytelling unfold as you turn page by page and whatnot brought me in, and where the barber gave me that comic. Next comic I saw under that, and I looked through, was a Spider-Man. I can't remember what was on the cover. I'm pretty sure it was a Vulture. Third one was Hot Stuff, the Little Devil. The most satanic of comics. So I would say, like, technically Neil Adams' Batman was probably the one that brought me into the fold, because I was familiar with the character and what he looked like and his portrayal in other medium. But this rendition of him, I mean, if you've never seen that cover, and if you're watching this show, how could you have not seen that cover? But it is one of the most beautiful comic book renderings of all time. You know, it's not something that happens in the book either.
Yeah.
So as a kid, you're seeing this, and you're like, oh my God, they must grow large, because they were as big as the cityscape, the Joker standing over Gotham. That moment. So you're like, they must go large. And as you look through the book, that never happens. It doesn't matter. They sold you one story up front, gave you a different story inside. Both were equally thrilling. So that's where that brought me into Batman, and I'd been a lifelong, and still have been a lifelong fan. I love the character for the same reason that most of the mainstream folks love the character, which is, you know, Superman is iconic and whatnot, but he's the symbol of hope that you look up to and you can never be, because I'm not from Krypton, I don't have superpowers. Batman, technically, if, you know, I had enough money, and my parents are now both dead, I could, you know, hone myself into like a living weapon and potentially function as a Batman.
You could be Batman still. So have you thought about it?
Could be Batman what?
Still. The New York
like
came
right
out.
now.
No way.
I think so.
55-year-old Batman. That's like Dark
Knight Rises.
I know, but he had a whole career doing it. Took 10 years off, and then he's like, I'll go back.
Get one of those trainers who does like
some
the
CrossFit
DC movies.
Like
and
Affleck.
Marvel movies.
Affleck went CrossFit for
great.
his Batman, and my guy, he was ripped.
Call him up and be
True.
like, hey, I want to do what you do.
Come back to the Batcave.
Put aside money.
I want to do what you do, but I want to do it for real. I know you did it for money, for fun, but I want justice.
Yeah.
I need to avenge something.
What city would be your jurisdiction?
Well, since I'm like totally cowardly, such a wuss, I would imagine that I would go after an area with no high crime statistics. So that would be, I'd go to Red Bank, New Jersey.
Red Bank, New Jersey.
Not a lot of crime there. Tall enough buildings, like maybe 2 stories. So if I did fall, there's a chance maybe I'd just break a hip.
I feel like you always explore things that are very different. Like in Cape Crusader, you did Onomatopoeia.
Yeah, hey.
Like, why would you pick him of all people? And now you have Bizarro.
He was my character. I created Onomatopoeia. So for me, he was like, I got to play with the concept in comics that I grew up reading, right? Anytime somebody makes a noise, they write the word out. So onomatopoetics, just a part of reading comic books. So when I was writing Green Arrow, it's like, what if we just had a character and all he did was speak in onomatopoeia? So that, like, on the page, it looks fantastic. You know, a guy could say blam, and then the sound effect is going to be the onomatopoeia on the page will say blam. But I always maintain, I was like, I don't think you could really do him in real life. I think it would be stupid. And they did him on Superman and Lois, and it worked. They hyped him up. They made him like a superpowered fucker. But
it's still the heart of it, the heart of the oddity of it.
Yeah.
And, and it's such an inside baseball thing to translate to a mainstream audience, and that's where we are with culture.
I remember when that happened, I reached out to Hester, because me and Hester and Andy Parks did the Green Arrow book, right? So technically, we all created Onomatopoeia. So once he showed up on a Superman and Lois show, I called up Hester and I was like, bro, we are gonna be filthy fucking rich. I was like, can you believe this? I was like, our good fortune? And he goes, all right, well, I just wanna calm you down. He's going, I've had this happen before where a character I've created in the comics is wound up in like a CW show. And I was like, and? And he was like, I got about $1,300. And I was like, damn it!
That's a start. That's a start.
With writing Bizarro, are you finding things in such an interesting character in language and in version, since you love language and words so much? Are you playing with language differently because of the way he speaks?
We get to, me and Eric Carrasco, we put the book together. We've been writing the book. And the book, honestly, is nothing without our artist. Nick Patera is an absolute genius. He draws on a Jeff Darrow-like level, like his intricate detail, and it's beautiful and horrible to look at the same time, his version of Bizarro World that we're kind of casting. So for me, I don't think the book would be anything without him. I think me and Eric are clever with words, but not clever enough to sell or sing yet another Bizarro song. And yet it did sing and sell. They sold out, which, you know, we're on our second printing, many more printings to go to get to the absolute Batman reprint level and stuff. But it was, you know, writing the character who is meant to be the reverse. You know you're going to get to me and Bizarro sooner or later. But we didn't want to do that up front, right? So it's kind of the story of this cosmic being who, you know, through happenstance, discovered an issue of the Daily Planet that coalesced and built an entire world around that version of Metropolis as it was presented in that issue of the newspaper that they threw into a space portal, as you do in comic books. So our first representation of Bizarro is he's like a fan version of the character who may have come from the mountain people. Like he's just built like a brick shithouse and whatnot, and he's missing teeth or they're separated and stuff like that. We wrote the character as very George Reeves in the old Superman serials and TV show. You know, and the idea was he's going to slowly devolve into Bizarro. But, you know, Nick being the artist, he was just like, well, I don't want to wait to draw Bizarro. like let's bizarre him from the jump and stuff. So he has this appearance that is kind of has grotesquerie to it, but he still presents himself as an educated supreme being. And slowly over the course of the book, we're going to see him break down and kind of revert. So it's always fun to write backwards dialogue. Yeah. And we eventually get there. The thing that I was like so happy about when we did it was like just figuring out, you know, why the S is backwards. And in our book, it's because they all live in this world where there's this Superman character, our Bizarro, who calls himself Superman and stuff. And, you know, they're all like, happy family, happy family. Everyone's terrified. They don't want to make a wrong move because he's got the temperament of a child and can easily destroy people and things. And so because of that, everybody's kind of treating him one way, but behind his back, there's a growing rebellion. And the rebellion to symbolize, like, you know how when they turned the flag upside down, that's meant to be like nation in distress. So the inverted S
in distress
is what's meant to be like. So the rebellious movement is like spray painting backwards S's everywhere and stuff. And then, you know, it's the whole thing breaks down from there.
How do you see the transition of comics from when you were reading to now writing to now owning a store? Are you still able to invest and enjoy when you consume?
Number one, you got to be a fan of the medium itself, which I am. So, you know, whether there's a book I read or not, I'm always supportive of anybody doing all in color for a dime, as we used to call it, man. Like, that's where the imagination used to kind of kick in for kids. Now, you know, kids, they reach them at all young ages. Used to be way back in the day when they started comics, you know, throw them at kids as a distraction and whatnot. Now, they're TV, the internet, a zillion other distractions. And the only audience that they cater to is us, like the people who grew up with it and stuff. So going after a kid, that kid discovers a comic book, that kid's imagination runs away with them, that kid grows up to start imagining other things and creating other things that becomes your favorite movie, the song that saves your life or something like that. Sticking something imaginative into the hands of somebody whose imagination is so fucking fertile at that age. Yeah. All they want to do is dream and stuff, and they haven't been encumbered by the real world of like, I gotta pay bills, I can't think about that, I've gotta be an adult and stuff. Is I think why we lived in a pretty decent world up until 10 minutes ago. Because you had generations of kids who were, you know, maybe they didn't go to church, and in church, generally speaking, they're supposed to teach you right from wrong, right? That's where a lot of people feel that morality is instilled. I don't necessarily feel that, but church traditionally has played that role. For me, I've always felt comic books played that role because I never practiced right from wrong based on what Jesus did. My right from wrong is all about like, well, that's not what Batman would do.
Yeah,
That's not
man.
what Spider-Man would do. That's not what Stan Lee taught us to do when he wrote these stories. None of these amazing artists who created these characters and then wrote stories about them, they were always telling the most simple biblical story, man. So the benefit that comes out of them for me personally, has been immeasurable since I was a kid. And so I bring it into like my daily life with the comic book store, owning the comic book store. We're coming up on the end of this year, 30 years.
Oh, it's incredible.
As a brick and mortar.
That's
Honestly, like when
incredible.
people talk about like, oh, you've been a filmmaker and shit, like the results there are up and down. Some movies you like, some you don't. One of my keenest accomplishments, I feel, is having a brick and mortar comic book store for 30 years. Having a brick and mortar anything for 30 years.
Especially
years
a
is
comic store.
insane.
But a comic book
Unprecedented.
store, and I granted we got like the benefit of propping it up with the movies and Jay and Silent Bob, but still at the end of the day, you could only buy so many Jay and Silent Bob things. People still coming through the door for comic books.
We want to finish this interview, making someone else's day.
Yeah.
We have a couple of fan questions here.
I'm ready. If there are any Kevin Smith fans left, I'm happy to.
There's a
address.
bunch.
That was the
There's
all
at
two
least
of them.
here. There's at least 2 of them here.
Present also.
And then we
Frankly.
have a couple here. So the first one is from D Hat Troy.
Okay.
What's your creative process for putting humor into comics?
What a good question. I unfortunately, because of what I do for a living and who I've been my entire life, it's tough to not put humor into anything. But you have to know what you get away with. For example, I have enjoyed the hell out of writing Bizarro Year None because there's ample opportunity, at least within the first 2-3 issues, for lots of humor before we get to our our finale and stuff. I've been doing a lot of Spider-Man writing lately, and I find that as a dad who makes a lot of dad jokes, I'm right in line with who Spider-Man is. Apparently, like my whole life, like I just realized now at this age, he just makes dad jokes all the time.
Especially Ultimate Spider-Man is like super.
Oh, but he's
dad.
finally a dad.
Yeah,
Ultimate
yeah.
Spider-Man's finally a dad.
It depends on the character. Batman, like when I wrote Batman for Widening Gyre and for Cacophony, or when I wrote him in Green Arrow, the humor that I enjoy with Batman is not like Batman making a joke, but Batman being so fucking stern and straight that, humor just arrives from the situation. Like in the opening of the Green Arrow, I think, is it in Quiver? Yeah, where it's like Superman and Batman are on the rooftop. Superman's talking about it happens during final night, so the sun is out, and Superman is like mortal and he's having this discussion with Batman about being cold. And Batman makes some comment about like, there are 1,200 different ways to feel this pain. And Superman is just like, who on earth would ever catalog? And then, and everyone else in Batman's world, like, can crack wise, particularly about who he is and how patrician and stern and like Epictetus that guy comes across. But giving him a joke is much, much harder. Alan Moore got away with him laughing and killing jokes.
But at the great cost of the end of things.
Johnson is lovely. He says, besides Jay and Silent Bob, if you were to recast Bizarro in any role from the View-Inverse movie.
View-Askew-universe.
View-Askew-universe.
View-Askew-universe, yeah.
Kevin, why did you name it that?
It's the View-Askew-universe.
View-Askew-universe.
There you go.
That's right?
Yep,
Yeah,
you got it.
View-Askew-universe.
But now I forgot the whole
just
question.
said,
from the top?
If you were to recast Bizarro in any role from the
In the View-Askew universe, who would I cast?
What would you pick? And he can't be Jay or Silent Bob.
Damn.
Yeah, he knew.
Because Jay is right there.
Actually, yeah.
Snoochie Boochies is Bizarro-esque.
Yeah.
I'd cast him as Dante because then he'd still be alive.
Oh.
Well,
Clerks
we
breaking hearts.
Pour one out.
Yep.
I heard you're a big fan of animation.
I love animation.
I wanted to know, because I believe the DC animated universe is the best in the game. No one's touching it. It impacts the comics. It's incredible. I want you to rank your top 5 DCAU.
Number 1 would have to be Batman the Animated Series because it was brilliant, but also my daughter's name came directly from it. I named my daughter Harley Quinn. And it was after that show, before they brought Harley into the comics, because Harley was originally created by Bruce Timm and Paul Dini for Batman the Animated Series before they brought her into the comics with an issue called Mad Love. Do you remember that?
Unprecedented to have a character on animation make it over, which I consider her superpower is escaping mediums.
Yes, and then she became so huge.
Yeah,
like
immediately.
massive,
Yeah,
massive.
still.
Yeah.
And I remember I have a photo of my wife, before she was my wife, she was my girlfriend, reading Mad Love in a tub. Because she was like, I'm gonna take a tub. She said, you like comics, what are you reading? And Mad Love had just come out. So I was like, you should read this. Everybody likes this book, it's good to look at, and you don't need to know anything else, it's self-contained. So she's reading that book and she got out of the tub, and one of the first things she said was like, Harley Quinn is a great name. If we ever have a kid, we should name the kid Harley Quinn. Number 2, Super Friends, because my childhood was made richer by all the incarnations of the Super Friends. One of my absolute favorites, of course, is when they fought the Legion of Doom, just because you saw so many DC villains against so many DC heroes. Generally speaking, the Super Friends didn't fight DC villains. They fought dinosaurs or witches and shit like that.
It
It was.
Like,
what's
It's like you've got, they're right there.
Legion of Doom is next door.
Yeah.
Yes. So, but still, I sometimes go to YouTube just to listen to the opening theme of the Super Friends. Banding together from the distances of the far galaxy come some of the greatest heroes the world has ever known. And it's, what's his name? It's Ted Knight doing the voice.
Is it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Superman.
So they didn't have money for villains.
Batman.
Ted
That's
Knight.
right. They were getting that Ted Knight money.
Ted Knight money in the 70s.
So I love Super Friends, would probably get number 2. I would probably go to Superman, the animated series, because I absolutely adored that. Justice League would follow that,
Which
all
one?
the incarnations.
Regular? Unlimited.
Well, I'll give 4 and 5 to Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. Well, Justice League had the benefit of like, oh my God, they're doing it.
Yeah.
Like, look, and oh my God, it's Jon Stewart. Like for an entire generation, there was no Hal Jordan. That was their Green Lantern and stuff. By the time you get to Justice League Unlimited, you have like one of the greatest Batman moments in any medium when he's sitting on the swings with Ace and talking about death, which you'd have to be a fucking robot not to feel something about, man.
One of the best iterations, I think, of Bizarro too.
Yes.
So what's
That
your
scene's
top
how I met
5?
Ace. Oh, my top
Quick,
5.
just-
Batman the Animated Series, because
Yeah.
it changed comics and animation and
Yeah.
people accessing comic books in general. Like
Gorgeous
it
art.
was-
And
yeah.
and we should give a special shout out to Max Fleischer's Superman, which inspired a lot of that
Yes.
Batman animated series look. and feel.
illustrated on black paper. It's so
Yes.
dark. Like that is a beautiful. So Batman animated series. Number 2, I'm gonna go Batman Beyond because it showed there is
Excellent
a versatility.
call.
Elseworlds. I think it changed our techno-futurism. It made me feel the Matrix vibes in an animated show. Number 3, I'm gonna go Static. I think
Wow.
Static Shock,
Yeah.
Static
It's
Shock.
called
Static
Static
Shock.
Shock, but it brought me Static.
But the show's called Static Shock.
Static Shock, which introduced me to Static, which introduced
the
me
Milestone
to
universe?
and
Yeah.
expanding into all those things.
I remember when
it
they launched
opened
the
a
Milestone
door.
universe.
Yeah.
Like to me, Static Shock, but introducing me to Static through an animated show was kind of like Harley Quinn, where I was like, oh, we can go this way with it. So Static Shock, and then number 4, I'm gonna go Justice League Unlimited because I do think it expanded the ability to tell team dynamics and it gave kids patience. I think it informed like long form storytelling. I think it allowed for us to like believe. And then I'm gonna go Batman meets Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated movie because it showed that you can blend very different tones and be authentic to both. And it made me believe that Avengers-esque crossovers were possible in animation where they both felt independent of each other. But when you put them together, Batman eating a slice of pizza, it allowed the humor, but the turtles still worked.
When did they do this?
This was 2014 or so. It's fairly recent. It's the guy that's doing the X-Men 97 show. That showrunner directed it.
Serious.
And it's incredible. And all of them
Look
feel like
out
the
for it.
Turtles, and all of the Batman
Feels
family
like
feel,
Batman.
and that's so hard to find in animation to land those tones.
You just sold me. I'm gonna watch
you
that.
up
Let's
to
give
the
a shout
line.
out to Batman Brave and Bold.
Oh,
I was gonna say
yes.
that. I like Cape Crusader. Like on my top 5, my
Cape
first
Crusader,
one.
good looking.
My first
that
one
was
was
the
obviously
visual look.
Yeah.
the visual look. Everything that was done in Cape Crusader was unintentionally funny. Like there's like one with a racist ghost that Mark Bedard does. It's really funny. But I would say number 1, obviously the animated series. That's
Wait,
number
Cape
1.
Crusader, the one that is on Amazon. Mark wrote that.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm talking about. Yes.
That's your number 1?
No. Number 1 is Batman the Animated Series.
Okay.
But number 2, I'd put that on there.
And that's a recent addition.
Yeah, but I
climbed.
don't, I think people are like, it needs to be old to be good, but
No.
I watched it, I was blown away.
I
Ever
mean,
since I saw Thick Penguin, I was like, This is for me. What they did with Harley Quinn, incredible. Static Shock, the Milestone universe got me into comics. My dad was
that
a
right?
huge fan, yeah. He loved McDuffie. So I was like, okay, Static got me on there. The rap music, I loved it.
Yeah.
I would say Under the Red Hood, which now I know you're partly responsible for because you voted to kill that man years ago.
We
so-
had no internet, kid.
Yeah,
Like we
so
had
you
to
voted into
amuse
you,
ourselves.
so thank you for that. And I guess the final one, oh man.
Five's hard.
Five's hard. There's so many really good ones. Oh, what's the one where Green Lantern gets jumped? Justice League War. It's just fun. It's just
I
fun to
also,
watch.
let's give shout out to when they adapted The Dark Knight Returns. Going away from Kevin Conroy
Yeah.
as Batman for that was really like a controversial choice.
I think it worked.
But it worked. Like Peter Weller really carried that in a way that it's not like Kevin couldn't. Kevin was and will always be the Batman. You know, when people ask like, who's your favorite Batman? That's my favorite Batman. The voice of Kevin Conroy is who I hear when I read Batman comics.
And there's not many characters I hear a voice, but I always hear him.
Yeah.
Like that is Kevin Conroy.
And Mark Hamill.
Yeah, oh, Mark,
Mark Hamill
yeah,
as well.
That's another
obviously,
character that
yeah.
changed everything. Like,
Yeah.
the
But that
animated
being
series.
said, like
Batman animated
they were
series.
able to make you forget that Kevin Conroy is our Batman with that Frank Miller, their adaptation of
Peter
Dark
Weller's
Knight.
so singular.
Well,
It's beautiful.
we need to do an episode that's just animation.
Yeah, we should break it down.
Like we could just
It's
go
just blowing every
I will-
DC animated thing we love.
There's yeah, I'm down.
They had a run, man, like
Yeah.
a huge run.
It still
too.
does. They're
ongoing.
still cooking right now. They did a Watchmen 2-part. That's
Yeah.
incredible. My Adventures.
The
with
one that came out a
Superman.
couple years ago. DC on a run lately.
Yeah,
Like a
yeah.
real big run.
It's
Yes.
changing the game. Absolute is really like
And you're a part of that with Bizarre.
I do.
Sold
I am
out?
a part of it,
Thank
man.
you.
Bizarre,
Yes.
you're none, for heaven's sake.
we'll
Nice
do
to
a
be here.
year-end animation run. We'll look
Yeah.
at the year to come.
Anytime you guys just want to fan out on stuff that has existed and whatnot, I'm here to do list shows like crazy.
Well, thank you for joining us, Kevin. This has been incredible.
Thank
so
you.
for the people living under a rock, please tell them where can they find
You
you.
can always find me at Instagram at @ThatKevinSmith or on YouTube, youtube.com/Kevin Smith. That's where we do Batman Beyond, me and Mark Bernardin and stuff. But you don't have to find Kevin Smith. I'll find you.
I was like, what's your camera?
Yeah,
You
right
look-
there. I'll find you. I'll show up at your door. I spend a lot of time on Facebook marketplace looking
Yeah.
myself up. So I will go and buy a Kevin Smith
love
pop
that.
at your house.
Yes.
And I'll show up. So if you're ever like, I want to see if he'll come to my house, just sell something that I used to make that I could sign and sell for more at my store.
I love that.
And you'll get me to show up. That's simple.
And Bizarre Year None is available right now at your local comic shop. Support local comic shops. If you're in Jersey, support a certain local comic shop. It's been there 30 years. Support some glory. But you can also get it on the DC Universe Infinite app, which is DC's online comic store with tens of thousands of comics and well worth your time. Support both. Get some comics. Bizarre Year None is so much fun. I'm very excited for more.
Thank you.
So excited.
Wow, that was a dream.
The best.
And it's so refreshing when I see a creator just love their work to that level. You
His
know?
passion is incredible, and it's so inspiring for someone that's been through so many iterations of nerddom to still love it the same. Like
Yeah.
asking him about like what he loves about comics and that feeling of passion just in the room, and man, he's the best.
Yeah, and just to see the joy whenever we would ask him questions like, oh, I love talking about this stuff. I want to nerd out. And he just seemed interested. And I think that's why his work transcends, because he's such a part of everything. He's watching what's going on in the world and he's commentating on it from his point of view, which I think is beautiful.
And he will not accept that he's a futurist. He won't accept.
He
We're both trying to
won't.
be
I was like-
man, you did this before it was popular.
He would
that makes
say,
you.
but I think that's part of just being creative, period, right?
Yeah.
When people give you, flowers, when people give you accolades, you're just like, I don't deserve it. I'm not one of those. But like, yes, even when I said you don't care what people think, and he kind of was like, I do. I was like, there's no way. You took out He-Man from Masters of the Universe for like 10 episodes. You don't give a fuck.
But he
And I
wants
like
to
that.
tell the story he wants to tell, and like
Yes.
that will not be at the cost of other people. You know what I mean?
And that's why he'll always have fans.
That's true, and that's
Yeah.
why he'll always make good art because he's making the stuff he wants to see.
Exactly. Wow. Now, before we wrap up, we want to try something a little different. It's called DC Dispatch.
We have heard from you. We want more of your inputs. We'll be reading comments. We'll be looking at ats on the social medias. We'll be all over the internet. You guys can send in theories. You can send in questions. You can send in suggestions. Help us shape things. We want to hear from you.
We were serious when we said we wanted the fans involved because this show is a fan-first show.
There's a desk out there for all of you. So, Frankie, what do you got?
Yeah. So our first question is from @HaunterDreams. More comic recommendations for whatever you're talking about that episode.
I don't know if that's in the form of a question, Jeopardy rules, but
It's more of you better.
there's a demand that I love.
Yes, yes.
So I would say today we talked about Kevin Smith and about Bizarro. So comic recommendations would be Green Arrow.
Yeah, you got a dog in that fight. Everybody's saying that you look like Oliver Queen.
This is genetics, okay? I can't grow anything here or here. This was all I got left.
Are you serious? I
yeah,
thought every day you just shaved yourself.
No,
Wow.
it's like just here doesn't look as good. This is just,
Yeah.
I was born to be almost Oliver Queen. If I was a better actor. But I would say his Green Arrow is amongst the best, and that's saying a lot. Phil Hester on art. Phil Hester did that incredible Gotham Year One a couple years back. Anyway, the Green Arrow run he did, I think, is so formative. Also, a lot of love for his Daredevil. Him and Joe Quesada reinvented Daredevil, and that's saying a lot because of how often Daredevil gets reinvented, but it's so formative. I would also say anything with his Quick Stop Volume 3, which we both gushed over, his Quick Stop stuff is amazing. But on the Bizarro side, very recently there was a really cool run from Jason Aaron called I, Bizarro. You might think of the Me Am Bizarro as the common nomenclature, and that is the play on I, Bizarro. And it's a very modern action comics run of Bizarro, and it's a really tragic, hyper-violent, very different take, and I really dug it.
Well, I do have a couple of recommendations because we talked about it lightly during our interview. The first one is The Absolute Universe.
Come on.
It is gorgeous, and it's the art that Kevin is talking about, where there are fans reimagining things that we've been reading our entire lives in a way that's so interesting and fun and fresh. My favorite right now is Absolute Wonder Woman. We talked about yours is Marshall.
I'm a Martian Manhunter guy.
Y'all, at first, Coy texted me and was like, hey, Martian Manhunter is the best. And I was like, I don't know, he's not black. But then I saw it was up for an Eisner, so I was like, let me see what's going on. Insane.
It's so crazy.
It's like Roswell kind of thing.
It's heady, it's
really
introspective,
cool.
It's using the medium in ways where you have to like use the paper.
I love it. It made a little dizzy. Yeah.
Good,
And
I'm glad you did it.
I read it on my iPad. It's a different experience than when you read it in paper. It's I put the brightness to 1,000. My vision's destroyed.
Well, Wonder Woman's my second favorite.
Is your second favorite?
So
yeah,
we're like,
we're neck and neck. I could see why. It's like Beyonce Renaissance versus Lemonade. Like when
100%.
someone says one over the other, I'm like, I get it.
you get it.
I
Like,
get it.
I've probably done a little bit more mushrooms than you. I get it. That Martian Manhunter art speaks to me. I get it.
That may be it. The next question is from I Am Scar Hero 2009. This is for the two of us. It's saying, what's your favorite DC Marvel crossover comic? Also, they can't wait for season 2, so welcome, we're here.
Ooh, so the two recent ones were amazing. Did you get a chance to check out Superman, Spider-Man,
but
Spider-Man, Superman?
I'm not a fan of the crossover comics.
Okay. Can I posit something? People that think they only like Marvel or only like DC are going to get to discover all the other heroes and find unity.
I love what it does for the community.
Okay,
I think
so
that's
you can
great. But
respect it.
who doesn't like Spider-Man? Who's like, should I check out
But
Spider-Man?
like all the supporting books, like, you know what I mean? The first book is them, and then the rest is like all these discoveries for people. I think it's a really beautiful, like, reaching across to be like, look at the characters everywhere.
Okay.
So I think it's a beautiful thing. I think my favorite one is probably the Batman Deadpool, where Grant Morrison wrote it and made the universes themselves sentient, and they be boning. So
They be boning?
They be bone. I don't know what words I'm allowed to say, but the universe is fuck.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because it's such an interesting, different take on universes colliding, and it's also, it suits Deadpool, and it's like interesting to see Batman having to interact with like someone as insane as the Merc with the Mouth. So that was a really special book.
Okay. All right, I'll give it. Now, this last one I think you're really going to like. It's from @SeanOGraffiti. And it says, and I quote, when is @Coy Jandro going to be cast as Oliver Queen?
All right, so what I need is 5 years of acting training.
Okay.
I'm already training physically.
Right.
But I need 5 years of acting training to get better, and then 10 years of archery training. Okay. So
now you're a bit older.
I'm about 10 years out.
So it's going to be Dark Knight Returns, Oliver Queen. Are you going to cut off your arm for... Like, how committed are you to this role?
Let me know in 5 years. Give me
See,
some time.
and that's
Give me
why
some time.
y'all,
Guys,
the
I'm so
answer
sorry.
may be
I'm so
never.
sorry.
He's not going to cut his arm off, so
I
you're not
have
committed.
failed this city.
You failed this city, but you didn't fail this podcast. Thank you all for joining us for another episode. This was insane, and it's the exact type of fun that we like to have here.
Yes. Season 2, another animal.
Yes. Well, that's all we have this week for DC Dispatch. If you guys have something to say to us, we're going to listen, we're going to watch it, we're going to read it, okay? So be sure to tell us what you guys think. If you have any questions for us, comment anywhere, okay? YouTube, on Spotify you can comment, on Threads, add us, and we'll respond or at least try to bring it here.
Yeah. Where do they at you, Frankie?
You can at me at Fantastic Frankey, Frankey.
You can at me at Coyjandreau, Coyjandrau, all the internets.
Or you can mention DC directly at DC Official.
You can find us. Send things in.
We
want
are
to see it.
around. We are around. Well, that's all we have for this episode. This is, I feel like, the nerdiest episode we've had.
I'm pretty proud of, like, the bar was high, and me too. I think you're right.
But you can find new episodes of DC Studios Showcase every other Friday on YouTube, on HBO Max, or anywhere you can find podcasts.
And if you could, please, in addition to sending us comments, questions, all that, leave 5 stars because it really helps the show. It helps us. It's very validating. We need that as nerds.
Exactly. Tell us that you love us. I'm Frankie Smith.
I'm Coyjandreau.
And this is DC Studios Showcase.
We'll see you next time. This was an OBB sound production for HBO, hosted by me, Coyjandreau, and Frankie Smith. Executive producer for HBO is Becky Rowe. Executive producers for DC Studios are Gary Barbosa and Philip Soponides. Executive producers for DC are Mike Pilata and Victor Diaz. Executive producers for OBB are Michael Ratner, Scott Ratner, and Toby Lawless. Producer for HBO is Aaron Kelly. Producer for OBB, Toby Lawless. Research producer, Sam Harrison. Production manager, Kevin Lynn. Production coordinator, Terry Kraft. Associate producer, Sam Harrison. Talent booker, Aaron Bandler. Editor, Adam Grabarnik. Post-production supervisor, Mariana Crisostomo. Assistant editor, Mark Alcacid. Production accountant, Bobby Hanna and Zachary Steinberg. Digital content producer, David Jimenez. Director of photography, Heath Gresham. First assistant camera and camera operator, Chris Piper. Key grip, Sam Satoski. Production designer, Liz Klikowski. Art director, Michelle Hall. Sound mixer and editor, Josh Falcon. On-set mixer, Darren Bowling. Hair and makeup artist, Kendall Shannon. Production assistant, Terry Kraft. Senior director, creative development and social strategy, Lenore Castro. Manager, creative development and social strategy, Sharif Bakari. Special thanks to graphics and artwork, HBO Max Concept and Design Studio. Special thanks to illustrations by Ariel Cologne.